Assalamualaikum, welcome back to English for Beginners channel. Here, we will practice listening through stories. Let's pray by Basmala. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. For support me, please subscribe and share this video. Thanks a lot, guys.
The Lucky Octopus. Written and recorded by Tara Benwell. Ollie the octopus only had 7 legs. The last one will grow, the ocean doctor said the day Ollie was born. But when? Asked Ollie's mother. She was very sad. When Ollie turns 8 years old, the doctor said. For 7 years, Ollie's brothers and sisters teased her about her missing leg. She was the youngest octopus in the family. Her sister, Olivia, was the oldest. Ollie only has 7 legs because she isn't part of our real family, Olivia told the other sea creatures one day. It was a lie, but everyone believed Olivia because she was the oldest. When the other sea creatures played games like tag and hide-and-go-seek, Ollie's brother Oscar wouldn't let Ollie play. You can't catch a fish with only 7 legs, Oscar said. Go and find a friend that has an extra leg to play with. Ollie searched around the ocean, but there weren't any kind sea creatures to play with. She was very lonely. One day, Ollie's brother Orlando saw Ollie playing by herself in the seaweed. He was very happy. "Guess what I found today, Ollie?" Orlando said. "A treasure chest. It's from a ship, and it is full of beautiful jewels." "Can I see it?" Ollie asked. "I've always dreamed of seeing a treasure chest." "I'm not showing it to anyone," Orlando said. "Especially not a tiny octopus with only 7 legs." Ollie went home and told her mother that she was sad. "Everyone treats me differently because I only have 7 legs," she said. "Don't worry," her mother said. "Tomorrow is your 8th birthday, and you will finally grow another leg. Then you will never be lonely." That night, Ollie dreamed that she grew another leg. Everyone celebrated and ate delicious food. She was so happy. But the next day, when Ollie woke up and counted her legs, there were still only 7. Ollie hid in the seaweed patch and cried. She was so sad. Suddenly, a sea fairy appeared. It was the tiniest creature Ollie had ever seen. "You are the lucky octopus I have been waiting for," the sea fairy said. "I am?" Ollie said. "Yes, only the luckiest octopus gets to make 3 wishes." Ollie knew exactly what to wish for. "First, I wish that Olivia was honest," Ollie said. "Your wish is granted. Now you have 2 more wishes," the fairy said. "Second, I wish that Oscar was kind." "And now he is," the fairy said. "And what is your last wish?" "Lastly, I wish that Orlando was fair," Ollie said. Before the tiny sea fairy disappeared, she told Ollie that she was the kindest octopus in the whole sea. "I wish that all of your birthday dreams come true," the sea fairy said before she swam away. When Ollie got home, her family was waiting for her. "Surprise!" they said all at once. "I bought you a present," Oscar said. "It's a beautiful pearl necklace." "Thank you," Ollie said. "You are very kind." "I baked a delicious cake for you," Orlando said, "and I invited all of the sea creatures to share it with us." "You are very fair," Ollie said. "Thank you for sharing." "I am very sorry. I don't have a present for you," Olivia said. "I forgot it was your birthday." "That's okay," Ollie said. "You are very honest. Thank you." Ollie's mother swam over to her daughter with a red birthday balloon. "I'm so happy for you, Ollie," she said. "Why, Mother?" "Look, you've finally grown your 8th leg." Ollie's mother tied the balloon to her daughter's new leg. It was the happiest day of Ollie's life.
Brought to you by englishclub.com.
More than anything else in the whole world. She had a polar bear, a grizzly bear, a panda bear, and even a koala bear. She had other animals too, but it was only the bears that got to sleep in Megan's bed at night. Each night, before bed, she gathered the bears around her and tucked them in. Before she closed her eyes, she told each of the bears to behave. And normally they did. But one summer night, the polar bear couldn't sleep. "It's too hot in here," he told the other bears. "I wish I were in the North Pole right now." "Where is the North Pole?" asked Panda. "I'll take you there if you want to go," said Polar. Panda did want to go, and Grizzly and Koala did too. So the four bears slid down the bedpost and headed off north. When they arrived in the North Pole, Polar showed the other bears around. Koala did not feel very comfortable. "It's too cold," said Koala. "I could never live here." "We polar bears have two kinds of fur," Polar said. "Some that is woolly and keeps us warm, and some that is spiky and keeps us dry. And even though we are as white as the snow, we have thick black skin that keeps us comfortable." "It was nice to meet your friends and family," said Koala, "but I wish I were somewhere warmer." So the bears headed south, all the way down to Australia. Koala showed her friends around. "Is there something to drink?" asked Grizzly. "It's hot here, and I'm thirsty." "Koala bears eat eucalyptus," said Koala. "We get all the water we need from the leaves." Koala shared some eucalyptus with her bear friends, and they all got sleepy. But just before they were about to have a nap, Grizzly's tummy began to roar. "I'm still hungry," Grizzly said. "I wish I were in the mountains by a nice cold stream." So the bears headed west, all the way to Canada. Grizzly showed his friends all of the wonderful things to eat, like fish and grapes and even garbage left by nearby campers. Panda was exhausted from all of the traveling. "I wish I were home where life is a whole lot slower," said Panda. So the four bears headed east to China. As they were traveling, Panda looked very worried. "Aren't you happy to be going home for a visit?" Polar asked Panda. "I am, but I'm afraid there won't be any pandas left," explained Panda. When they arrived in China, there were only a few other panda bears around. Panda and his friends had to share one small bamboo stick. "Where is everybody?" asked Koala. "Is this all there is to eat?" asked Grizzly. "I'm afraid bears like me have almost gone extinct," said Panda, "and most of the bamboo trees have been cut down, so there isn't much to eat." The bears were tired, so they decided to head back to Megan's house. All the way home, the bears were very quiet. They had enjoyed their trip around the world, but they felt sad that there were only a few panda bears left. When they had snuggled back in bed with Megan, Panda lifted up his head and smiled. "I'm so thankful to have other bear friends like you," Panda said. "Friends don't have to be panda bears. Other kinds of bears are just as nice." The bears smiled and hugged each other and then closed their eyes and went to sleep. A moment later, Koala sat up again. "I have a secret to tell you," she said. "I'm not really a bear at all. I wish I were a bear, but actually I'm a marsupial. I hope you'll love me just the same." None of the bears said a word. They were already fast asleep. But just when Koala thought her secret was still a secret, she heard a tiny voice. "I love you just the same as all the other bears, Koala," Megan said, "and sometimes I wish I were a bear, too." The Sick Lion by Aesop. A lion, unable from old age and infirmities to provide himself with food by force, resolved to do so by artifice. He returned to his den, and laying down there, pretended to be sick, taking care that his sickness should be publicly known. The beasts expressed their sorrow, and came one by one to his den, where the lion devoured them. After many of the beasts had thus disappeared, the fox discovered the trick. and presenting himself to the lion, stood on the outside of the cave at a respectful distance, and asked him how he was. "I am very middling," replied the lion, "but why do you stand without? Pray enter within to talk with me." "No, thank you," said the fox. "I notice that there are many prints of feet entering your cave, but I see no trace of any returning." The moral of the story is, he is wise who is warned by the misfortune of others. The Mouse, the Frog, and the Hawk by Aesop. A mouse, who always lived on the land, by an unlucky chance formed an intimate acquaintance with a frog, who lived for the most part in the water. The frog, one day intent on mischief, bound the foot of the mouse tightly to his own. Thus joined together, the frog first of all led his friend the mouse to the meadow, where they were accustomed to find their food. After this, he gradually led him toward the pool in which he lived, until reaching the very brink, he suddenly jumped in, dragging the mouse with him. The frog enjoyed the water amazingly, and swam croaking about as if he had done a good deed. The unhappy mouse was soon suffocated by the water, and his dead body floated about on the surface, tied to the foot of the frog. A hawk observed it, and pouncing upon it with his talons, carried it aloft. The frog, being still fastened to the leg of the mouse, was also carried off a prisoner, and was eaten by the hawk. The moral of the story is, harm hatch, harm catch. Chickens Take a Holiday. Written and recorded by Tara Benwell. The sun was about to rise on Farmer Tim's farm. Chester Chicken woke up the cows with his important news. "The chickens are taking a holiday today," Chester Chicken said. "Is that so?" said Daisy the cow. "What is the special occasion?" "We worked too hard this week," Chester said. "You did?" asked Daisy. "Yes, we laid 10 eggs this week," Chester said, "and there are only 5 of us." Daisy smiled and nodded her head. 10 was a lot of eggs for 5 chickens. "Enjoy your day off," she said. "But what about us?" the other cows said to Daisy. "We gave Farmer Tim 100 pails of milk this week. There are only 10 of us." Daisy agreed with the cows, too. 100 pails of milk would make a lot of cheese. "But we can't take a holiday on the same day as the chickens," Daisy said. "What would Farmer Tim say?" Daisy and the cows moved over to a patch of grass to have their breakfast. "The chickens are taking a holiday," Daisy told the trees, "and we don't think it's fair." The trees were not happy with this news. "I've dropped over 1,000 apples this season," one said. "And I've had 1,000,000 cherries picked," said another. The wind blew and the trees put on their angry faces. "We deserve a holiday more than the chickens," the trees shouted together. "We worked too hard all season." This woke up the rake that was sitting on the grass underneath the trees. "Have you heard the news?" the apple tree asked the rake. "The chickens are taking a holiday. They think they worked too hard this week." The rake stood up and announced its disapproval. "I raked over 1,000,000 leaves this year, and there's only one of me. If anyone deserves a holiday, it is a poor, tired rake." Just then Rowdy Rooster hopped on the fence. He looked up into the sky and began to crow. It was time for the farmer to wake up. The chickens and cows and trees waited for Farmer Tim to come out and pick up the rake. But a minute passed and Farmer Tim did not appear. Rowdy called 2 more times. "Call him again," the chickens yelled to the rooster. "He must be having a dream." Rowdy made one last call, and this time Farmer Tim woke up. But he didn't come out and pick up the rake, or milk the cows, or check on the eggs underneath the chickens. Instead, he opened the window and shouted loud enough for everyone to hear. "I worked too hard this week, I say. It's time I took a holiday."
Today's story is A Surprise in the Oven, a French-Canadian folktale. Once upon a time, a plump old woman named Tante Adela lived in French Canada. She lived all alone with her big gray cat and the cows in her barn. One morning, she got up very early, as it was baking day and there was much to do. She took a load of wood outside to her oven. "Now, why would the oven door be open?" she said. She poked a stick inside to see that no leaves or twigs had blown in. But the stick would not go far. Something was in there. The old woman bent over to look in. When she saw what she saw, Tante Adela slammed the oven door shut. She ran out of her yard and down the road as fast as she could. At Felix Bell's farm, she saw the neighbor drawing a bucket of water from the well. "Felix! Felix!" she called out. "Come quick! There's a skunk in my oven." "Are you sure?" said Felix. "Maybe it's your cat." "Of course I'm sure," said Tante Adela. "Does my cat have a white stripe down its back?" "I'll come as soon as I draw this bucket of water," said Felix. Tante Adela turned and dashed back to the road. She headed for the next farm, the farm of Louis Ross. After all, 3 heads are better than 2. "Louis, Louis," she cried out of breath. "Come right away. There's a skunk in my oven." "A skunk?" said Louis. "Are you sure it's not a scrap of old fur coat you may have thrown away by mistake?" "Why would I throw away a fur coat?" said Tante Adela. "Am I the kind of person who would do that?" "You have a point," said Louis Ross. "I'll come over as soon as I've finished feeding the chickens." The old woman turned to the road and limped to the farm of Samuel Roy. "Samuel! Samuel!" she cried out. "You must come to my farm. There's a skunk in my oven." "Are you sure?" said Samuel. "Maybe you saw a shadow inside as you opened the door." "Does a shadow have a bushy tail?" said Tante Adela. "Does a shadow grit its teeth at me and snark? I don't think so." "I'll come right over," said Samuel, "just as soon as I finish weeding the garden." So, Tante Adela went from farm to farm looking for help. By the time she made it back home, Felix and Louis were already there. Soon after, Samuel came too, and others who had heard about the skunk in Tante Adela's oven. "Yep, there's a skunk in there all right," said Madame Ross, who had opened and closed the door. "I know that," said Tante Adela. "The question is, what to do about it." "I'll run home and get my gun," said Felix. "That'll take care of that." "No, no," cried Tante Adela. "Think of the smell." "She will not be able to bake bread in there for a month," said Madame Roy, and everyone agreed. "And it would spoil the pelt," said Samuel. He trapped for furs and knew what he was talking about. "What if we got a dog?" said Alice, the daughter of Samuel and Madame Ross. "A dog will bark. Maybe that will scare the skunk out of the oven." "If the skunk gets scared," said Tante Adela, "think of what it would do." "What if we get a piece of meat and tie it to a string?" said someone else. "The skunk will come out on its own when it smells it." "I have no meat," snapped Tante Adela. "And if I did, I would surely not waste it on a skunk." So this plan was dropped. No one else cared to use their own meat to lure the skunk out of the oven if Tante Adela wasn't going to use hers. "Oh, woe is me," wailed Tante Adela. By then, everyone was getting bored with the question of the skunk, and it didn't look as if Tante Adela was going to serve any food or drink for everyone who had come. Soon, Felix Bell and his wife remembered they had to milk the cows. Louis Ross said he must get back to clean the barn, and one by one, everyone found a reason to head home. At this time, Tante Adela saw Jules Martel come into the yard. The young man may be simple-minded, she thought. Still, Who else could she turn to for help? "Jules," she said, "Jules Martel, there is a skunk in my oven. Can you get him out without scaring him?" All right, listeners, I'm just going to stop the story here for a minute. I want you to think for a second. What would you do to try and get the skunk out of the oven? Okay, thanks for thinking about that. Now, we're going to head back to the story and see what happens. Jules nodded his head. He walked over to the oven. He opened the door and leaned inside. He spoke in a low voice. No one could tell what he was saying. At last, he stepped back. Then the sharp face of the skunk stuck out of the oven doorway. Everyone stepped back a few feet. The skunk wiggled its way over the edge and dropped to the ground. Slowly, the skunk made its way through the yard, holding its head high, and it headed into the woods, where it disappeared. Tanta Adela was thrilled. All the others were amazed. "How did you get him to come out?" said Samuel to Jules. "What did you say to it?" said someone else. "I just told him," said Jules, swinging his arms back and forth, "that if he stayed in the oven anymore, he would begin to smell like Tanta Adela's bread. And if that happened, none of the other skunks would come near him." "Who would have guessed?" Samuel Roy shook his head. "That a low creature like a skunk cares about what other creatures like him think of him." "I suppose all creatures must have some sense of self-respect," said Alice Roy, "no matter who they are." Alice Roy and the others nodded in silence. Have you ever seen a skunk before? Skunks live in North America, and they certainly live in the woods, in the wilderness, but they can live in towns and cities as well. I've seen skunks several times. Their bodies are kind of low to the ground, and they waddle as they move, and they really look different than any other creature. And they do have that white stripe down their back.
This video. I hope you can share this to your friends. Thanks to englishclub.com and storiestogrowby.org. Thanks a lot too for you who listen the stories here. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil alamin, wassalamu alaikum warahmatullah. See you in the next video.